Welcome to the Support is Sexy podcast. I'm your host, Elaine Fluker, executive coach for high-performing women. Join me for inspiring conversations with over 500 women leaders around the world as they share how they excelled in their careers or launched successful businesses and the important role that support played along the way. Because as we always say, having it all does not mean doing it all alone. Here we go.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of Support is Sexy. I'm so happy to have you here. You know, it just would not be the same without you. And on this episode, from the very beginning, you will hear how excited I am to welcome our guest today, Tara Roberts, who is not only a fabulous writer, author, and incredible explorer, which you'll hear more about. Her book is called Written in the Waters, and I go on and on and on about the book and how fabulous it is and how well written it is. But I really enjoyed the conversation with Tara. Well, one, because we are old Essence magazine buddies from like 20-something years ago. So I've known her for a very long time and so proud of where she is. But also the discussion about discovering one's history and also discovering oneself on this courageous journey we're all taking of life. So I'm not going to talk long in the intro because this episode is a nice, long, juicy one. I'm going to let you, pun intended, dive in. And I hope you enjoy my conversation with the wonderful Tara Roberts, which, by the way, left me in tears at the end. Enjoy.
Tara, how are you? Oh my gosh, it's been 867 million years.
Times two. How about that?
Times two. Exactly. How are you?
So good. And I have to say, I was so excited to get this note from you so that you and I conversation. Maybe.
Oh, me too. Me too. I'm so proud of you, first of all, just seeing all that you're doing. And I just finished reading your book and it's amazing. I have so many, probably have too many questions, but we'll see what we get through. But so many great questions. But I'm just so happy for you and proud of you. And it's just beautiful to read about your journey and then witness what I've seen of it. So yay, you.
Thank you for saying that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I will say, and I commend you. I wrote some notes here, so I make sure to remember everything of just how beautifully written your book is. But not only that, of course, because, we're writers, so of course it's going to be beautiful. There's that. But also just the way that you wove in history and, as for everyone who's listening, deep history, really thoughtful about what you were witnessing and things you were learning as you went along, your family background. And it just was, I just thought it was so, just maybe from an editor even standpoint, from a reader certainly, but we get into that mind. I don't know if you still do that. I do still sometimes, like, this is really great structure. This is just well done. So all of that.
Yes. This is, it means even more coming from you with your background. Like I as editors read. So to hear you say that, I'm like, woo, thank you.
Oh, good. Okay. I was hoping you would just say, of course, like I said, beautiful and anyone can read it and enjoy it. But I just appreciated how it was done. Because I would imagine, I don't want to project this on you. This is my own limitations. But was that easy to do, to be able to weave that in and in a way that someone would want to read, to be honest, right?
Yeah. No, it was definitely tricky.
It was tricky.
Yeah, it was definitely tricky because it, as you said, it's history, it's adventure, it's a little bit of a travelogue, and then it's the memoir pieces that are about my transformation. So yeah, it was a little tricky.
And I kind of felt like it was, I don't know if this is the right term, but I was going to say coming of age or coming of age again, because so much of your journey was like transformational and what you were going through at the time and that kind of thing.
I had not thought about it as a coming of age story. I like that. I like that a lot. Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
Yeah, because you really tell us what you were experiencing personally, apart from, the adventure for to kind of sum up just what it felt like to me. But apart from that, what you were experiencing as a woman at that time, you talk about family, you talk about so many things. So I know I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm just excited. I love the book. I thought you were just amazing at telling the story. Written in the Waters is the book for everyone. As you can see, I pun intended, jumped right in to the conversation about it. But tell us first, where are you, Tara? Where are you right now? Because I know you're in the midst of the book tour, yes?
Yes, but today I am here at home in Atlanta, Georgia, where it is pretty outside. I just came from visiting my mother.
Nice.
So I'm happy to be home. Yeah.
So did you resettle, so to speak, back in Atlanta after you did all your, okay.
That's
And
it.
Atlanta is home. I didn't know were you born there? You were born in Atlanta.
Born in Atlanta. And I also was one of those persons who used to say, I will never, ever live in Atlanta. I'm out of here. Can't wait to be gone. Now
You saying that when all of us were moving there, like from New York and Jersey and okay.
I don't know why y'all moving there. I don't know.
Right.
But now that I'm back, and I've really been back for like 2 years, I'm like, Atlanta is amazing.
It
Atlanta
really
is a
is.
beautiful, wonderful city, and I'm appreciating it newly now.
Yeah, I feel like there's nothing like it. I mean, there's certainly transplants, and there's a lot of transplants, I should say there. I actually love meeting people who are from Atlanta. It's just like, you're from here? And you're like, no, from here. And people like yourself are like, yes, I was born here. I did not come from somewhere else, because so many people flock there.
Do you meet a lot of people from Atlanta?
No.
No, you don't.
That's the thing. When I'm in Atlanta, yeah. So it's not rare, but just for me, the circles, everyone's from somewhere else, and usually family from the South. Like mine was from Alabama and moved to the North to New York, and then came back to Georgia in the '80s, late '80s. So it's a common story. But tell me about your journey of let's start from this.
One thing.
Okay. Yes.
This is how you can tell that there's someone from Atlanta when you're driving. If you get to a light or anything happens where typically the car behind you would honk its horn, but
absolutely
nobody honks. Nobody honks. It's somebody from Atlanta.
Absolutely. It's so funny. When we first moved there, of course, New York, as the light turns green, it's like green honk. Like if you don't move right away, there's no pause, there's no nothing. But I've noticed now with more transplants, more people, more traffic, it's a lot more noise pollution, a lot more of us there honking the horns and all those things. But there is still such a quality and certainly a history, but just, I don't know, I feel like there's a lot of wonderful southern cities, but I feel like there's nothing like Atlanta in my experience.
I agree with you. Yeah.
I'll give you that. Nothing like Atlanta. So what has the experience been like for you traveling around and sharing your story and sharing the book and all of those things? What's it been like for you?
It's been beautiful. You never know how stuff is going to get received. So you never know. And this is one of those topics that especially you don't know how people are going to receive it. So it has just been heartwarming, just beautiful. How many people are showing up, expressing interest, saying that they're actually reading the book. It's amazing. The number of media outlets who are still interested in telling the story. It's just been really beautiful.
That's amazing. Did you wonder if the interest was going to change because of the times that the United States, the world, but certainly the United States is in right now, with such a drawing back from, in my opinion, the storytelling of history, especially for African Americans and Black people?
I have to say, even before this administration or just what's sort of happening right now, I was a little nervous about how people would receive this. I mean, I think we're in a moment generally in time where I think people are ready for a new conversation. Some people are tired of looking back. Some people are wary of looking back. I think that the way that I look back is a bit different. It's through just the work of the scuba divers is just so unique. It's a really different way to look back. But I didn't know how it was going to be received. And then especially now, I didn't know. So
One of the things one of the things you started off speaking about in the book was it was 2016. I think you all were at the Women's March, right? And talk about funny enough, at the first round of this administration versus where we are now. But you mentioned that that was a sort of a pivotal, or at least I took it to be a pivotal day in the start of your journey. Can you tell us about where you were at that time, what you were experiencing, and why it was sort of a shift for you?
yeah. So I had just moved to Washington, D.C. I had moved there to take on a new job. And it was a job doing something I hadn't done before. I was working in a nonprofit doing communications work. And I think quickly, I really saw that communications work is different from storytelling, from journalism, which is my love. Yeah, so I really saw that there's a difference in that, and I thought that the fields are so closely connected that there's some similarities, but it's really very, very different work. And so I realized, 2016, 2017, that, like maybe that's like my real passion, my real calling is in the storytelling space, but that's not the work that I'm doing right now. So that was one thing that was present. The second thing, all the work that I've been doing prior to taking this job had been focused around gender equity and gender equality around the world. I was really trying to support, the efforts to empower women and girls everywhere. And I felt like we had made tremendous progress over the last 20 years. You and I came from Essence, like we represented for Black women, really trying to help give them voice and help them see themselves bigger and greater. So it felt like all of this work around gender was really taking root and really blossoming in incredible ways, surprising ways around the world. But what I noticed was happening in 2016, 2017 was that the conversations around race had really gotten to a fever pitch in a way that really showed the fractures in our national consciousness around that conversation. And I wanted to do something, but I didn't know what to do. Okay, my background is gender equity. I'm now working for a nonprofit that had a little bit of interest in that space, but its work was different work. It wasn't like, let's really deeply focus on that. So I was kind of miserable in that moment. I'm not expressing my passion. I'm doing work that doesn't feel like it's quite the right fit. I want to be contributing in the race space and don't know how to do it. So in 2017, first I went to the Women's March, and then another thing happened. I had two close friends who came, and they came with a pendant of their great-great-grandmother, and they were really standing for the work that formerly enslaved people in their family had contributed to the world. And I just had this feeling of rootlessness, because I'm like, what am I doing with myself? Who am I? Like, where am I going? None of this is feeling right. And then I was so impressed. And at the same time, I felt horrible that my friends had really taken the time to honor their ancestor and acknowledge her in such a big way. And I was like, I don't feel connected to my ancestry at all. I mean, I have a family, I have a big family, but like, the people beyond my sort of immediate circle. So I was just in my feelings about all the things and just confused about where I was and what I was doing. And this was the same year that the National Museum of African American History and Culture had just opened. And it was really hard to get tickets to go.
I remember that time. Yeah.
Like it had just opened. Everybody wanted to go. Someone at my job got me tickets to go, and I went. And that was the moment that really transformed everything for me. It was at that museum that I saw an exhibit that had a picture of a group of primarily Black women in wetsuits on a boat.
And you were like, what is this?
Yeah, it just stopped me in my tracks. Those women, they looked so beautiful to me. And they looked so free. They looked like they were just living life inside of joy. And again, I'm in this moment where I'm feeling so uncertain,
and you're kind of searching for this joy at that time.
Yeah. So when I see them, I am like, who are they and what are they doing? And then I find out that they're part of this group called Diving with a Purpose, and that their mission was to help search for and document slave shipwrecks around the world. And I remember just being like, wait, what?
What? Right.
Wait, these people are doing what? These people who look like me are doing what in the world? Oh, it stopped me.
Did you have a moment where you thought, how did I not know about this? Or how had I not, well, maybe hadn't heard about that? Used to have moments like that, I think, more often too, when I was just coming from Essence from the time we were there, because we did so many of discovering these kinds of stories or these kinds of individuals, et cetera. It's just like, how is this not ever on my radar or knowing it existed? That's what when you said it in the book, I was like, did we ever do a story? I went through that whole thing.
And Diving with a Purpose has been around for over 20 years. So
so
more than enough time for them to get into our consciousness. But
right.
I never heard of them at all. I never thought about Black scuba divers. I was not a scuba diver at the time. Yeah, I'm from Atlanta. Like, I don't know anything about the ocean. It's a whole
right
world. But I think for me, one, it was, wow, these people just feel extraordinary and the work that they're doing feels extraordinary. But I think it also struck another chord because when I was a kid, I used to read a bunch of fantasy and sci-fi books, like young adult books. Those are my favorite kinds of books to read. And I loved stories with characters that were like on quests to save the kingdom. Like, I loved stories like that. And I wanted to be one of those characters. I really wanted adventure in my life. Like, I knew that I wanted to be some kind of storyteller, but I also really wanted to be an adventurous storyteller. I wanted to be out in the world, like, using my body to explore, to find new things, to tell new stories in the world. But as I grew older, I just realized that none of the characters in the books that I love so much look like me. Like, none of them were ever little Black girls. And so I think I started to believe that I couldn't have a life like that. And I think it settled in my consciousness, and it directed a lot of my decisions and where I went and where I didn't go. So for me, seeing those women in wetsuits on a boat who were scuba divers and who were doing this work. So not only were they adventurers, but it felt to me like they were on a real life quest to make a difference inside of this conversation.
I literally called Diving with a Purpose.
Hello.
One of the things that you mentioned was during that time, it was when you got this unexpected, I should say, invitation from Diving with the Purpose, that it felt like your first heartfelt yes is the word, are the words that you used in there. So I'm curious, what kind of courage does it take to sort of give a heartfelt yes? Or does it take, is it courage, or are you doing it afraid, or what was it in that moment? Because I would imagine you still weren't necessarily quite sure of what is this going to be? Is this going to be anything? You were carrying so much. Sometimes when we're in that space of, a woman I interviewed, Patricia Moreno, calls it living the question, which I believe you were doing, which is a great space to be in, sort of, I don't have the answers. I don't know the how, certainly, right? I'm just going to live this question and walk about and go to the museum and see what comes up. And when you're in that space of openness, you can see a picture of these women, and just other than saying, oh, that's beautiful, I didn't know about that, and moving along, you receive it in a different way. But once you decide to move forward, what is that heartfelt yes? What kind of courage did that take for you?
I love this living the question. Ooh,
I know.
That's some juicy stuff.
Yes.
I love that.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah. In that moment, I would say that I was so turned around inside my own soul that I didn't even know that I was asking a question. Like I can't say that I connected the dots in that moment. Mm-hmm. All I knew was that something about the women, something about the work just brought a sense of joy inside of me and curiosity and wonder. So that's what I was present to. And I stayed on the floor where the exhibit was for like an hour. I was Googling them. They also had an exhibit, an interactive exhibit that was a part of it that allowed you to sort of pretend that you were excavating a ship. And I played with that.
You were just immersed in the experience.
My imagination was all over the place. And again, so I wasn't a scuba diver. So I was like, I don't know if I could do that. Like I didn't immediately, well, maybe there was a part of me that could see myself doing it, but I didn't immediately give myself permission. I was just like, I'm going to reach out, because I was working for this nonprofit that gave out grants. And I was like, maybe help them get a grant. I was like, I can be of service to them in some way. This feels like it's so important. I don't know that I can participate, but I can help them. So I reached out. I reached out to them, and I spoke to their co-founder, who's this amazing gentleman. We've become really good friends since then. But he at the time, he was 72 years young, from New York, got like a New York sensibility, but he was living in Nashville. And he was
this Mr. Ken?
This is Mr. Ken Stewart.
Mr. Ken. Mr. Ken Stewart.
Ken was like, when I told him that I worked for this nonprofit and we gave out grants, and he was just like, y'all got money? You gonna give me some money? Yeah, I'm in. I'm in. So that started a series of conversations. I introduced Ken to the team at the nonprofit, and we started a series of conversations. But my nonprofit really supported social entrepreneurs, which there's a different language that social entrepreneurs use, a different way that they approach change. And Ken, 72 years old, he's just like, I'm just trying to do my thing. He doesn't speak that language. And so it wasn't a fit. But because we'd had a number of conversations over a number of weeks, we became really friendly. I guess he figured out that I was Black. And at the end of our last call, he said to me, he still to this day calls me by my full name. He's like, Tara Roberts, you know that you live in the epicenter of Black scuba diving? And I was like, what? I live in Washington, D.C. And he was like, that's what I'm talking about. That's where all the cats live. And I was like, what? He extended the invitation that I didn't know I needed. I needed someone to invite me in.
Invite you.
And he did. And he was like, do you want to come dive with us? And if you do, I will get you in the scuba diving training class that is happening right there in Washington, D.C. at the oldest Black diving club in the United States. Like, this diving club has been around since the 1950s. Legends dive in this club. And he was like, I'll get you into it if you want, and you can come dive with us. And so when he extended that invitation, it had been weeks of me listening to him, listening to the work. So I didn't need much after that. I was like, oh, you just made a way? Mm-hmm. So
that was your heartfelt yes.
Was my yes. And it was, when I say heartfelt, it was because it was my childhood self that was like, yes, finally, like this is how we imagined living our life, like inside of adventure and real purpose. So,
That's
yeah.
beautiful. I thought it was interesting too what you mentioned as you were telling the story, even going back to seeing that picture. You were saying I never could see myself doing, this thing or see myself, but then it was literally, or not literally, but in a way, seeing yourself because you're seeing these Black women. It's like, oh, this is, like we said, living the quest, even a possibility now. It just makes it more kind of tangible. And then you go through the process of meeting Mr. Ken and then going through the process of getting to know him. And then the invitation comes. But to me, it still felt like, and even feels like as you're retelling it, you were still sort of, we'll see where this takes me. We'll see where this goes. And being in that space is sometimes not easy when we think we're supposed to know.
Yes. And I would say that I still wasn't thinking about storytelling in that moment. I wasn't thinking about anything except this feels good to my soul and I just want to be a part of it. And I just imagine myself like just learning how to dive. And the thing that Diving with a Purpose teaches is this technique called underwater archaeology mapping. And so it trains lay people who are not archaeologists, not historians, just regular people who like to dive. It trains them on how to actually map a shipwreck on the ocean floor. So you're down there with clipboards and mylar paper and pencils and measuring sticks and you're drawing. So in the moment, all I could imagine was being a part of that, like giving to that mission, helping to bring history back up from the depths. I was like, I just want to be a part of it. Like, this feels wondrous to me. And it is giving my heart like, what? Joy. So that's all I was thinking initially.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then it took the training with the dive club is a 3-month-long training. So a lot of people can go get their scuba certification in a weekend. The underwater adventure seekers are like, oh no, we don't do that. Like we train you. So I spent a lot of time with the divers, and quite a few of the divers were also instructors with Diving with a Purpose. So I was really getting to know them, getting to know more about this work, about their mission, about who they were. And I remember initially after, this process and after I got certified, I was just like, these people are incredible. Like they are funny, they are generous, they are skilled, they are crazy, bunch of crazy people. I was just like, somebody should tell their stories. And that's when it clicked. And I was like, wait a minute, I'm a journalist who hasn't.
I can do this. Right.
Maybe I can help tell their stories. And so then that's when stuff started to sort of click in this is work that I might do. Aha.
That I love that too, because this is for everyone listening, right? The aha, just thinking about the timing of things. I can tell this, get to know this group, tell this story, etc. Doesn't come when you're standing in the museum. Certainly doesn't come when you're at the Women's March. You're not even thinking, the diving thing hasn't even happened, right? You're just where, who, what, and where am I? And then you have the moment in front of the picture. But even then, the idea of the storytelling doesn't come until later. So this idea of, we hear it all the time, but I just want to illustrate for everyone here or point out what is the next move I can make toward, right? It's all you can see.
Some big, long thing. So, I couldn't have imagined that we'd be here today. All I knew was that, and the way I talk about it, I love the way that your previous guest spoke about it. I talk about it like, it's me following the light inside. I knew that when I thought about staying inside of the work that I was doing, which was fine work, like it's a good nonprofit doing great work in the world. But when I thought about staying there, I would get tired and feel heavy. When I thought about just learning more about the divers, I felt such lightness and joy. Like All I wanted to do was follow the lightness. What keeps making me feel good? And let me
Hmm.
acknowledge what's not making me feel good. That's my soul talking to me. So that's the way I've
Yes.
been thinking about it.
I love that. My coach, one of the things that she has told me is, and which I tell everyone, I always give her credit, Margot, first feel, second solve. Because so many of us jump into solution. We're trained to, we're women, we're Black women. There's all these different layers of, we need to figure it out. We need to make it happen. We got to know all those things that come at us or we take on for ourselves. And it's usually something happened. How can I solve this? How can I fix this? And I've been trying to be just what you just mentioned, more present in what am I feeling right now? Where is this coming from? What might have happened that either, prompted me to feel this way, or what am I thinking that's causing me to feel this way? And then when I coach people, I say, then what you say, what is the feeling I want to have?
Yes.
What is the feeling I want, or what is bringing the light and the joy and those how can I do more of that? What's then the solution? What's the next move I can make that gets me closer to continuously feeling this joy and that kind of thing? But you have to be willing to process those emotions, which a lot of us were trying to, for different reasons, trying to skip through it and just get to the solution, right?
Yes. And it's easy to stay in your mind and to try to
Yes.
work things out in your mind. I don't know who says this, but it feels very true to me. I think that the language of the soul are the feelings. It's the body. So if you can get still and listen to what your body is saying to you, your body doesn't lie to you. Your body tells you the truth.
Your body tells you.
You get a knot in your stomach. You get something in your throat. You get a headache. You feel tired. Like that is your body. That is your soul talking through your body and telling you what's good for you and what's not for you. So you're right. Like, do we have the willingness to actually honor and listen to that? Sometimes it's hard, but
Yeah. Do you think it's harder in your experience and from what you know, it's hard, it can be harder or seem harder when you're scared or when you don't know or when you're uncertain, or you had mentioned earlier in the book at the march that you were having feelings of shame about not feeling a certain connect. So we have all these other emotions. How did you know to get still, or is this hindsight of, what worked for me was getting still at that time? Because usually we try to get busy doing something like, I don't like this. Like getting still and listening to your voice. People are like, I don't know, my voice isn't telling me anything. I got to do something, right? It's just like, what do I got to do? You're like screaming over your inner voice.
yeah, yeah. It's a really good question. I tried to do some other things too. I tried to start some other things that would have me involved in the race conversation. I started looking around, but none of it was flowing. I think that is the other piece to it, is when there is a flow. Like, I use the language of the universe. Some people say God, some people say intuition, some people say other things. I tend to say the universe, but I think that's the universe speaking. It's the way is open. It's just, will you follow it? So what was happening, all the other things that I was trying to do, there was no flow. Like I couldn't get anything moving in that way. But with this, Ken, come, there's a class happening right now. What? A class just started?
Right.
Oh,
Right. And you're in the city where it's like the
I'm in the
biggest
city,
group.
right?
Right.
And I also think before this, I was running my own nonprofit because I'd taken a detour from the journalism world for about 6 years. So I'm in this nonprofit social entrepreneurial world, and I've been living in Atlanta, and I actually had a spiritual counselor, a psychic, whatever you want to call her, tell me that it was time to close my nonprofit. And I had been planning to close it, but I was going to close it like I had a 2-year, plan. And she was like, no, within 2 months, you need to close it. You need to step away from it. And I was like, what are you talking about? It's
I know. Right.
by the end of the year, you need to let it go. And I think like there's something about me having that conversation with her saying the thing that she said to me. And right after that conversation, a friend who I hadn't talked to in years called me and was like, you know what, I'm going to be in Atlanta. Are you there? if you are, let's hang out. And we hang out. And that person is the person who recommends me for this job in DC. And by the end of the year, and I was like, I don't know that that's the right move for me. And he's like, just give me your resume. Don't worry about it. If it's not, it's not. But just give me your resume and let's just see. By the end of the year, there's an offer from this place, which takes me to DC. And I think if I hadn't have lived in DC, would I have gone to the museum? If I'd gone to the museum, would I have gone as slowly as I did because I lived in, like, it just...
It's always
like
connecting the dots looking back, right? Yeah, the way was being made. Exactly. So tell me about then the moment that you at that point, is that when you decided about the storytelling, did you apply with National Geographic or submit the idea to National Geographic, or where were you at that point once you said, oh, this is a story that I can tell? And I know there was a time when you were trying to get grant money, not the initial one, but again, sort of getting support for the work that you now wanted to do.
Yeah. Well, first I went to Diving with a Purpose and I asked them permission. I was like, can I help tell your story? And they said yes. So that was a big thing. And then I did find, it was a Nat Geo Fulbright grant, and I applied for it and I didn't get it. And by this time, I had also decided, like, this is work that I want to do, period, and I'm going to do it. So I put in a resignation for my job. And I was like, I don't have anything solid, but that's all right, because I'm still all in with this work. The divers were doing missions in Mozambique, South Africa, Senegal, St. Croix, Costa Rica, around the U.S. And I didn't want this to be something that I was doing on the weekends or to sort of piecemeal it. I wanted to devote all of my time to playing in this space. And so I gave notice, and I did give a long notice because I was a director and I wanted them to have time to really fill my spot. So I gave them a couple of months notice, but I was out of there and I applied for this grant and I didn't get it. And I couldn't back up, and I didn't want to back up. I was like, again, it's flow. Like, we're moving forward. We're not going to move backwards. So right after I gave notice, I went to India because that same friend that had recommended me for the job was getting married. And I had all these frequent flyer miles. And so I was like, I've been planning to fly to India to his wedding. And I realized, hello, that's my way to get to India. I'm there. Southeast Asia is relatively inexpensive. I was like, I'm going to stay here and get my dives in, because Diving with a Purpose requires you to do 30 ocean dives, because you got to get your scuba certification, but then you have to get good at it so that you can do the work.
Right.
So I was like, I'm just going to stay there and I'm going to figure it out. Like, I'm committed and I'm going forward and it will work itself out. So while I was there, I went looking for more grants, more fellowships, more anything that would give me some money. And eventually I did come across another Nat Geo grant. And I have to say, this is also another way that the universe works. So the Fulbright Fellowship, I think that came across my desk because it was a Fulbright. Like, when you look for opportunities abroad, like, Fulbright shows up. That's and it Nat Geo was a part of it, but it was this Fulbright thing, and Fulbright had more of the restrictions around it. So that felt like that was good to apply for. But around this time in 2018, Nat Geo put out its race issue. And this was their moment of reckoning with their past around race. And I remember being so impressed with the issue. They had given it over to people of color to determine what articles should go in it. They wrote it. They added photography to it. And it was an honest, like, this is who we were. This is what we did. This is how we contributed to this.
And this was 2018.
This was 2018, right?
So this is before big 2020. This is
Before.
aligning with you. Yes, this wasn't just, So it really, I would imagine, is impressive. It didn't seem as performative as some things might have after that.
No, it felt genuine. It felt beautiful. I remember reading it cover to cover and just being like, I am so impressed by National Geographic. And that caused me to really go look. I was like, well, what are they doing and who are they? And that's when I found out that they gave out grants on their own. And I was like, oh my goodness. And that particular year, they were focused on the ocean and on human history and culture. So I was like,
no coincidence.
Man, like flow. This is.
Yes, exactly. It's like, here it is.
I'm going to apply for that, even though I got, rejected from this first one.
Right, which is a good point to mention. Like, let's try it again. And this is the one. Is this the one where you were writing like at the airport on the plane, figuring? Yes, because the deadline was exactly. Yeah, that's the thing. Like, I'm going to go for this.
Yeah. And I think I put that application in. It was somewhere in the spring, and they didn't let you know until the fall. So I didn't know. And I was like, it's because Nat Geo was one of the magazines that I used to read as a young person because there were so many adventure stories in it.
Yes.
Photographers out in the world.
The visuals, exactly.
Amazing. But after a while, I never saw myself in, their authors or their photographers. So I stopped reading it because I was like, this isn't a pathway for me. So to come across that issue and to have Nat Geo center itself back in my world, it's just like, oh my goodness, this is awesome. But I also didn't think I was necessarily going to get it because I didn't
as a
magazine as this Black woman. I hadn't done that type of writing or storytelling before, so I was like, well, I don't know, let's put it out there and see. And then I went on to finish my 30 dives, to get my training in with diving with a purpose. And when I did that, even more, I was like, this is work I must do. I was like, if I don't get that grant, I'm going to find a way. If this means I got to move,
I will find a way.
Mozambique and become a waitress. I don't know. I don't really speak Portuguese, but like, I will find a way to do this. This is work that I must be a part of in some way.
I love it. And that's the thing too. I think how that lit you up, it just not even of this is what I want to do, but I am going to find a way to do this thing, which might take, like you said, being a waitress or moving to, a country where things are a lot less expensive, living expenses are a lot less expensive and doing this other, but you were also moving, for everyone to catch, in parallel with, this is the dream. I'm still going to work toward this thing, and I'm going to try these other things to figure it out. A grant, doing other kinds of work, or whatever you need it to do, so they can exist in parallel, right? The dream doesn't. It kind of. Another woman I interviewed, Chantal Pirat, talks about her company's Emerging Human. You work until the place where your profit meets your purpose, like where they kind of align here. I call it name prop. I try to give people credit at least twice. I always say that. After that, I might just take it. But you know what I mean? These women, this is why I love doing these interviews. I'm always like, I'm going to take that. I'll give you credit. But it's sort of this thing where I guess your dream meets the income or whatever you need to sustain it. But sometimes one is elevating or flowing more than the other. You got to figure out this thing, or sometimes it's the other way. I got to figure out how to do more in this dream. And it sounds like you were just, at that point, once you decided this is something that fulfills me, that I know will fulfill me moving forward, I got to figure this thing out.
Yeah.
And you figured it out.
Yeah.
Because then in 2020, you did get that grant, right, with Nat Geo. And then in 2020, I need everybody to catch this. In 2022, you were on the cover.
Right.
Yeah,
that was not.
This is like, it's not like this. Then 20 years later, it's like 4 years later, then you're on the cover.
Not only on the cover, but that was the same year when they named me, like, National Geographic named me the Explorer of the Year. could not.
What?
Thinking of me as a kid, feeling like, oh, there are none of these places that show me I can't do this work. But to have like the most iconic brand in the space of travel and geography,
An exploration.
an exploration, name me Explorer of the Year, because of this work that I'm doing, also to help heal the conversation around race. Like I could not have imagined that ever.
Would you say even if someone had told you while you were standing there in the museum looking at that picture, in a few years you're going to end up on the cover of, that sometimes people, how did you even, you can't even imagine even if someone had told you, because the dots, as we said,
whatever.
connect looking back, like, what crazy person, go away. I'm immersed in this experience right now.
Exactly. Which is why it goes back to the thing that your first guest said and the things that you said. It's not about like planning out this, huge thing that's going to get you all these accolades. It's about following the next step, following the light, living the question. Like that's all you can do. And then it leads you where it leads you.
What would you say that this has taught you about being in that space of it leads you where it leads you? Because one of the other things you explore in the book too, as I mentioned, the coming of age again kind of story of you went through a period of thinking about family, and there's usually some, I won't necessarily say sacrifice, but you definitely have to make certain choices. If I'm going to have this kind of life, I'm going to pursue this kind of thing, whether it's certainly being a explorer of the year for National Geographic, but even some of us with work or, other things. There's different choices we make, not having children or wanting to be your stories about dating were hilarious, or not being partnered. And then, well, this is how I'm going to do this. So what did it sort of just teach you about literally charting a different path than what might be expected for you as a woman, and a woman at a certain age, and all these things?
Yeah. Because we have to note, I'm mid-career, like, I'm not 22, making choices.
Right. You're not just, she's getting to know herself and, backpacking, but underwater throughout you're not in that stage. You've already had a career.
And it was a good career, and I chose to step away from it completely.
And you had a business, your nonprofit that you stepped away from, right?
Yeah. Yep. I would say that before this journey, maybe there was a part of me that felt a bit uncomfortable with some of the choices that I've made. I like, for those who are listening who are into astrology, I'm an Aquarius. I have Aquarius moon. I got my Venus in, like, I am an Aquarius, and we are often, astrology, whatever.
I'm into it, so no judgment. I'm into it. I know some people are, and some people are. I'm into it. I want to know all the things.
There has been a rootlessness quality to my life, with me following the ideas that come to me. I've lived a pretty unconventional life. I haven't partnered. I don't have children. I say this in the book. I've had like 20 addresses in like 20 years.
That's me. I'm your sister. I'm your Pisces sister living the same life. Exactly.
Yes. And I would say there is some judgment around that. In the world that we live in, the thought is that you settle down, you get a family, you have a secure job.
If not, what's wrong with you? Something's wrong with you.
Yeah,
is something wrong? Settle? Are you okay? Right.
That's right. You need to go to therapy, something.
Right.
Even my mother, like, maybe up until like the Nat Geo cover, was just like,
she was worried.
A job.
What are you really doing?
So I would say that there was a part of me, because of the world that we lived in, like, I felt good about what I was doing, And in context of the world that we live in, I felt like an outlier. And a part of me, felt some shame over that, like that I am a certain age and, like these things are not a part of my life. And I don't know that I had, like, I definitely have friends who appreciate that and friends who do live that, but it feels like we're sort of a small tribe, even though now I'm beginning to think it's maybe a bigger tribe than I thought it was.
I think there's a
Yeah,
bigger tribe
maybe.
of people who want to live that way.
Exactly.
The
Exactly.
choice, the people who make the choice, I think, is still a relatively small tribe of crazies like us.
Right. But I think you're right that there are more people who are like, you know what? We could be doing it a different way. Like, why is that the way that it has to be? And especially some of those experiences really, clamp a person's spirit down. So to your question, I think that being on this journey, going all in with it, I think having the support and validation of a big brand behind it, it validated some things for me that I hadn't allowed before. This is something that Liz Gilbert, she's the author of Eat, Pray, Love.
Yeah, yeah.
Because she's like an ultimate explorer out just doing her own thing in the world. But she was like, Tara, we need you as an explorer. We need you to not settle down. We need you to not be afraid to do that so that you can keep telling the stories that you're telling. And I was like, wow, what a difference for me, like holding my head down and being like, yeah, I am this age, like, and, like I'm living on the edge here.
Mm-hmm.
But to switch that, to flip that, to, right, I'm an explorer. I got stuff to do in the world.
Right. You are literally an explorer.
Right. Right. And I've got stuff to do that maybe I wouldn't have been able to do. I wouldn't have been able to make these choices if I had chosen differently before. So again, that like the way that the universe works, like listening, and letting it lead you where it leads you. You can't always anticipate where you're going to land. I always have this this thing that I say about traveling the curvy path. And I feel like I'm, and you and a few of us, we're on the curvy path. It's not a straight and narrow path that takes you from A to B. You go around mountains, up, down valleys, up and around. And it
underwater.
Underwater. And it takes you places that you can't anticipate. But those places are connected. Like your path is meaningful. So now I am like, yeah, there couldn't have been any other way for me to arrive here. I've
you mentioned
with it.
You develop some peace with it. One of the things that you mentioned too, as you get to the end of the book, is the idea that you felt like part of your work of exploring these, learning about these slave ships that are underwater and doing all the mapping and all of the things that you mentioned that go into this work. A part of it is dealing with or getting over shame, sort of this understanding about history, especially for African Americans or formerly enslaved individuals who are in different parts even of the world, not even just America, and this sort of shame of not knowing our history. Because when I was listening to it and you were talking about looking back at your own family generations, I can only go back, just to my knowledge, to my mother's grandmother. Nyanza is her name, Johnson, for anyone who knows. So I was like, wow, I don't even know. You were talking about your great grandfather, and on my father's side, actually, I'm going to call my sister today, but I don't even know his biological father's name. I just know Mr. Ben, who was like his father for as long as I knew until I got older. And it's like, oh, that's not really, but we were families like that of that time, especially maybe all over, but certainly in the South. It was like, well, this is the man who's in the house, who's like the father. This is his father. So there is some, whether we are conscious of it or not, this shame or this feeling of unknowing or lack of awareness around it. So I'm sure, or shame about the unknowing or lack of awareness. So for you, how have you sort of come to terms with, you mentioned sort of dealing with shame around not having this connection in the beginning versus where you are today? That was 2016 and 2025. What is your relationship around that now? Whether it's the shame or the connection now to history and how it sort of serves you.
It's so crazy that by naming those years, you just contextualize the time. It's been 9 years.
It's been 9 years, 10 years in a few months.
Yeah.
That journey.
I definitely was one of those persons who was afraid to look back. And I was afraid because it just felt too painful. Most of the stories that are told about Black history tend to center our trauma, our tragedy, and our pain. And quite honestly, I felt traumatized in looking back and staying in those conversations because there often wasn't a way out. You just like stuck in the pain of it. So I didn't like to look back. It's so interesting that the work that captured my attention was a dive for slave shipwrecks. Like, there was a way that I would have to look back.
Yeah. Right, and document it.
But I would say that, doing this work gave me a way to approach the past that freed me. Now I don't feel afraid of it. I still am cautious about certain treatments of it, because I still think that there is a tendency to really like revel in the trauma of it. And that's less interesting to me. But I learned as, we found stories of these ships and found stories of the people who were in the cargo hold, that these aren't just stories of death, that they are stories of resilience, stories of resistance, stories of survival. Like, I don't know if you knew this stat, but they estimate that 1 in every 3 slave shipwrecks experienced a rebellion on board, and that these rebellions were often led by women. That is interesting history.
I did not know that.
Yeah. One thing that an archaeologist, this young archaeologist who's incredible, and I'm still crediting her. I've gone beyond my 2 times.
Right.
She's the the co-founder of the Society of Black Archaeologists. Her name is Ayanna Flewellen. And she said to me, she's a terrestrial archaeologist and now a maritime archaeologist because of Diving with a Purpose. But she said to me that her work is not about telling stories of death. She's like, as an archaeologist, my work is about telling the stories of how they lived. She's like, I'm uncovering the stories of what brought them laughter, what brought them joy, how they worked, how they connected. It's the stories of life. And what I realized is that, again, when we tell stories about Black history, it's not always, sometimes it is, but it's not always about the life that we've lived. It's about the death that we
experience. The pain, the trauma, right.
Yeah. So I feel like through the storytelling that I do, and this has been something that I have been clear about all along, I am not interested in the stories of trauma. I am interested in acknowledging what happened, but I'm interested in the stories of healing, the stories of transformation, the ways that we move through the pain to get to a new place. So that is one thing that happened. And then the other thing that happened on a more personal level, because all of that is it's a little removed from me personally. I met some descendants of the ancestors that were brought over on ships. And a group in particular that I met and got to talk with and really got to know are some of the descendants from the people who were brought over on the Clotilda, which is the ship that was wrecked in Mobile, Alabama. And it's the most recent shipwreck to be found. I mean, the Clotilda is an incredible story in so many ways. First, it's incredible archaeologically because it's the only slave ship that has been found intact. So it is just an incredible testament to history. And this was a history that the people who built the ship tried to hide the evidence. Like they tried to pretend like it didn't happen. So this is an example of, it's an artifact where you can't deny it. Like it happened. Here is the ship. We can prove it.
Right. And that's so interesting. There's a group of people, the history want to know about it and then there's always a group that doesn't want it to be told or for whatever reason.
Yes. So that makes it an extraordinary story because of that. But it's also an extraordinary story because 32 of the Africans who came over on that ship were enslaved in Mobile, Alabama. The others were dispersed throughout the region. But the 32 that were enslaved in Alabama were freed in 1865 because of the Civil War. And when they were freed, they made the decision to work and to pool their money together. They managed to save, it took them 9 years, and they managed to save $300. With that $300, they invested it, or they bought 57 acres of land. And they turned that land into a community called Africatown. And the astonishing, amazing thing about Africatown is that it still exists today. In its heyday, this town, this neighborhood.
In Alabama.
It's in Mobile, Alabama. And in its heyday in the 1960s, the town had close to 20,000 residents, started by 32 Africans who were brought over on a slave ship. It's incredible. But what is the impact of that on me personally is that I got to know some of the descendants of those 32. And what's incredible was that they expressed no shame about their ancestors. They knew the stories of accomplishment. They knew the stories of life of their ancestors. And these descendants felt nothing but pride. There was just such a sense of pride, and that pride extended into who they were and how they carried themselves in the world. And it made me think, like, what would change for us if we had pride in ancestors, if we knew their stories, really leaned into those stories of resilience, of resistance, of survival, and of connection, the stories of love that they had with each other? Would we feel different? So all of that gives me the courage to actually look back in my own family and to go, well, actually, I want to know now the stories.
Right. I do too. Listen, I'm calling my sister today after we get on the phone. Like, what was good grandpa's real name? Like, give me some background. I need to do some research. And it's interesting. It's not necessarily like the ancestry.com or some of these other sites, which, there's other ways to do it, but like just the closeness of a great I want to know that before I get to, like you said, how they live, what they experience. I think what you said is so powerful too, because I hadn't thought of it before, but sometimes at that time, I should say the shame or keeping us focused on pain and those kind of things about our history was a way to keep us in place, as opposed to learning about our history and having pride about the survival and not even just during times of enslavement, even beyond till yesterday, right? Making you feel negatively about your history, where you come from, whatever, for any people is a way of keeping you in control and in a space of not feeling fulfilled as a whole human versus.
Just think about African Americans, or those who are descended from enslaved people, were made to believe that it was their fault. Like there's something about who you are that made it make sense for you to be enslaved. Like that is who you are and who you're supposed to be.
This
And
is your
so,
punishment for who you are.
right. So there is this incredible sense of shame that I think that many African Americans feel in looking back. What a con job that has been done on
I
us.
know. And I
On our
literally just
own.
never spoke it or had it spoken in such a way until this moment of And it's just like, right, of course, just like not letting people learn how to read and all these other ways of control, which we can get into a whole other hour about, right? Religion and other things. But the sense of just keeping it's a way of controlling you and just to give yourself the permission, as we've been talking about, to whatever that looks like, explore your history or even who you are. I mean, there's all kinds of ways throughout this conversation, actually, that we've talked about. It could be, especially for women, a sense of control of this is how you're supposed to be. This is what you're supposed to think. This is all you can imagine, or this is what's safe to imagine, and that kind of thing. Whereas you've been such an illustration for us of how to just live, think, dream, experience outside of that. But yeah, I'm gonna think about that even more. Of just it's just, but it's the shame is. Then you have shame about having shame. It's all like control, right? Yeah. Then I'm ashamed of being ashamed. It's such a control. I have one more question. Do you have time for one more question? I want to be conscious of your time. Okay, so you said that in Costa Rica, the question of who I am was discussed among the group of divers there, and that it's a question you were having during those dives. So I will ask, and of course, it's like, who am I? But I'm sure the translation from Spanish, right? Who I am. So I ask you, what has this adventure taught you about who you are?
I haven't been asked the question in that way before. And I'm like, do I have a full answer yet? It almost makes me think of Michelle Obama's word. Like, I feel like I am becoming. And maybe that is the process. Do you know, like it's the becoming that is the joy, that is the work, but it's also the who you are. Once you arrive, is it over? You know, I don't know. That's an interesting thought. Yeah, I would say one thing. This is a great question. It's stumping me a little bit because I think one thing that I got from this journey and this work is that who I am is large and it's not really containable. You know, like I don't know that it needs to be forced into some adjectives. Maybe it's a little bit bigger than that. Maybe we all are bigger than that. You know, there's something about language that can trap you because it names you and then you become that thing, but maybe you are really much bigger than that thing. But one thing that I will say that I think I am as a result of this journey and this work is I'm a part of Jack, John Jack Roberts, who is my great great grandfather, who was born enslaved in 1837 in Edenton, North Carolina. This is a man whose picture has been on my mother's wall for decades, and I have never, before this journey, been curious about him, never asked questions about him, did not want to know anything about his life. Because of this journey, because of the descendants of the Clotilda, I researched. Well, I didn't. I had help. I asked for some help in finding out more. And I learned about Jack, and he moves me, touches me. I feel so rooted to him. So no matter where I go in the world, no matter what I do, no matter what titles I take on, all I know is that Jack is in me. I am him and he is me. And it makes me feel beautiful.
And now I'm crying. Oh my goodness. Well, that's all I got, Tara. I literally cannot. I literally cannot go on. I just tell everyone where to find you and get your beautiful book while I pull myself together over here. Oh my goodness.
That's such a beautiful question. Thank you for that.
Whew.
Yeah, so book is it's written in the waters, a memoir of history, home, and belonging. I think it's everywhere. It's in most places online and in bookstores. If anybody wants to follow me and follow this conversation, I'm on Instagram. It's Tara Roberts Explorer.
Because yes, you are Tara Roberts Explorer. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much. Hold on for just a second.